So now you've got your evidence, but how are you going to use that evidence and incorporate it into your argument? You need to make the distinction between primary, ancient, and secondary, modern material. Primary material includes things like ancient authors and ancient artefacts. The ancient authors can be found in translation. For example, the Loeb Library. Does anybody know of those books? The green books are for the Greek translations and the red books are for the Latin translations. So they're a great academically acceptable translation that you can use. The ancient artefacts can be found in museums or on online catalogues, or also in excavation reports or excavation updates. And of course, secondary materials are ideas of modern scholarship that can be found in articles, books, journals, online, all these places. Just some points to be careful of. Some ancient authors can be writing several hundred years after the event that they're writing about, and often have a broader idea to prove, so they tailor the evidence accordingly. So authors like Plutarch or Manetho. So make sure you know the backgrounds of the authors that you're using. A quick and easy way to do this is by looking them up in the Oxford Classical Dictionary. Also remember that while the material in an excavation report is classified as primary evidence, the interpretation of the excavator is a secondary source. So the archaeological drawings, plates, and lists of items uncovered are all primary materials, but the excavator's opinion and interpretation of the significance of these items will be a secondary source. For example, a plate or figure showing a pot found in a house will be primary evidence, but the excavator's opinion that this therefore shows that the citizens of Pompeii knew that Vesuvius was going to erupt, that's secondary material. Just be particularly careful of excavation reports that are older, for example 19th and 20th century excavations. Petrie excavated and published a lot, but many of his ideas have now been superseded, so just keep that in mind when you're reading. Okay, so here's an example of some of the problems associated with excavation reports. On the left, you have primary evidence, a plan of a villa. But on the right, you have the excavator's interpretation and idea of what he thinks that villa looked like. And that is a product of ideas in the 19th century. As you can see, this work was published in 1837. So while the image on the right is very pretty, and I'm sure we all wish we had a villa like that, I know I do, it's secondary evidence, it's not primary. Remember to evaluate your evidence. We've already talked about the importance of knowing the background and context of the ancient authors, but it's equally important to be critical of your archaeological evidence. The discovery of a single Indian figurine does not mean that everybody had one, or that the cult was widespread. Something else to keep in mind is the quality of the secondary work you encounter. So when you come across something, consider, is it in a reputable scholarly book or journal? Archaeological diggings, National Geographic, Tour Egypt and other popular magazines are not scholarly. Do not use them. And don't use high school textbooks either. And above else, avoid Wikipedia like the plague. We cannot stress this enough. Wikipedia and Tour Egypt, don't put them in your bibliography, don't use them. The articles on Wikipedia are created and edited by the public, and they're not assessed for accuracy. And if you put them in your bibliography, you'll get a big X mark through them by the markers. They don't like them. Employ a similar critical mind frame for other internet sites. So generally, when you're searching on the web, sites that end in a .edu, if they're part of a university, they're generally reputable. But even with that, just always be wary of what you're reading. Okay, so to illustrate the point, here's an example of three sources, A, B, and C. Bless you. Which one is better, do we think? Take a moment to read. Anyone? C? Why?
He's quoting from a source, but he's then using that to form an opinion, or state an opinion as to what that implies.
Perfect, and exactly what you said, he's using a source, and you see he's using footnotes as well. So you're right, C is the better response. It's actually from a scholarly book, Andrew Wallace Hadrill. We actually have this book in the library, coincidentally. Whereas B, even though it's still by Andrew Wallace Hadrill, you can see it's just something published for the public. You can see it's accessed from a BBC website, so it's not scholarly, it's meant for public consumption. And A is also a high school textbook, so that's a no-no. So C is the correct answer.